floating on cloud nine, basking in the euphoria of marrying the love of my life. I never anticipated the storm brewing on the horizon. The tempest arrived in a deceptively innocent package addressed to my mother-in-law. Curiosity piqued, I eagerly tore it open, only to be confronted with a revelation that would shatter the tranquility of our newlywed bliss. In an instant, the harmony between my husband and me unraveled into a nightmare, orchestrated by forces I had never imagined. But I refused to be ensnared in her web of manipulation. My name is Jessica, and just 6 months ago, I joyously wed my husband, David. Our future shimmered with promise, a canvas awaiting the brushstrokes of cherished memories. Yet fate had other plans, unveiling its cruel twist a mere month after our nuptials. As I tended to our home, embracing my role as a dedicated homemaker, the doorbell's chime shattered the tranquility. A parcel, a harbinger of chaos, bore the name of its sender. My mother-in-law. A parcel from my mother-in-law? Intriguing. There had been no prior mention of any such delivery, and David seemed equally unaware. Piqued by curiosity, I untied the knots, securing the box. Within, an unexpected assortment greeted me, clothing, not the stylish ensembles one might anticipate, but rather a collection bearing the unmistakable signs of age and wear. "What is this?" I stammered, bewildered by the sight before me. "Old clothes," came the curt response. I was dumbfounded by the array of garments, some marred by telltale signs of use, others adorned with holes and frays. Among them, relics of bygone fashion eras lingered, now reduced to gaudy remnants of their former glory. As I grappled with this peculiar offering, the shrill ring of the phone pierced the air, a timely interruption from none other than my mother-in-law. "Oh, Jessica dear, did you get my gift?" No. How can you call that a gift? They're clearly old clothes, and they're hideous. Who could possibly consider this a gift? As I stood there, bewildered by the unexpected situation, my mother-in-law began to explain casually. "You see, those clothes are ones I used to wear a long time ago. I found them while tidying up my closet." But mother-in-law, some of them have holes in them." "Don't worry, dear. I included some new ones I bought recently. Please try them on." Despite my confusion, my mother-in-law chattered away cheerfully. Was this harassment, or was it genuine kindness? Honestly, I couldn't decipher her true intentions. When my husband David came home from work, he immediately noticed the mountain of old clothes. "Did Mom give you a gift? That's nice." It felt more like she was offloading them rather than gifting them. Even so, if my mother-in-law's intentions were kind, I didn't want to seem ungrateful. So I did mention the holes or the poor taste to David. A month later, another package arrived from her. As expected, it was filled entirely with second-hand clothes. This time, the amount was overwhelming, and the designs were even worse than before. "Oh, who would wear these?" I exclaimed in disbelief. I felt bad for my mother-in-law, but this was nothing short of an unwelcome favor. The clothes were just crowding my closet. I should give them away or sell them at a flea market. As I was thinking this, the phone rang. It was my mother-in-law again. "Oh, Jessica, did the clothes arrive?" I gathered some really special pieces this time. Her cheerfulness was almost overbearing. Even so, it would be problematic if she kept sending them regularly. "They're old and not really my style, mother-in-law. I appreciate the gesture, but I don't usually wear such flashy clothes." When I gently declined, her tone suddenly changed, and she became angry. "Excuse me, Jessica. What do you mean by criticizing the clothes I went out of my way to send you?" The correct response is thank you. "No, actually just wear them, Jessica. Sending you all those clothes will surely save you some money, won't it? The next time you come over, make sure you're wearing what I've given you, okay?" With that, my mother-in-law issued her one-sided command and abruptly hung up the phone. I sighed, realizing I'd made her angry. I had never known her to be so forceful with her opinions. That night, I decided to gather my courage and talk to my husband about it. "David, do you have a minute?" "Wait, you got more presents from my mom." "Well, that's what I wanted to talk about." David still thought I was receiving gifts I'd enjoy. When I explained the situation, his eyes widened in surprise. "Second-hand clothes?" "Yes, second-hand clothes, and they're not my style at all. I can't possibly wear them." I told him about my attempt to gently refuse over the phone and how it had upset her. "Can you talk to her, David?" David stayed silent for a while, sensing my distress over the unwanted clothes his mom had sent. I hoped he would come up with a solution to smooth things over between us. "I'll call Mom," David finally said, stepping out onto the balcony with his smartphone. I hoped he could resolve the situation, but when he returned, he said something outrageous. "Mom told me she was just trying to be nice by sending you clothes. You make it sound like it's a nuisance. You should be more grateful." I was baffled by David's words. "Hold on a minute. I told you right. I can't wear those clothes. They're not my style at all. Your mom said she used to wear them. Are you making fun of my mom's taste? That's not what I meant. Besides, some of the clothes even have holes in them. Are you saying I should wear those?" "Enough." Mom started crying when I told her you didn't like the clothes. "Please don't upset her anymore," David yelled. After yelling at me, David stormed off into his own room, slamming the door behind him. "Wait, what? Is it my fault?" I muttered, stunned. I never thought David would take his mom's side. Even if he didn't exactly support me, he could at least try to understand my feelings. I felt as if I had been betrayed by my husband. The following month, another package from my mother-in-law arrived. When I visited my in-laws' home and it was discovered that I wasn't wearing the clothes she had sent, she exploded. "I went to all this trouble to send them to you. Why aren't you wearing them?" she demanded. "Yeah, Mom went out of her way to send them to you." David joined in, siding with her against me. "No one really cares or notices what you're wearing. More importantly, it's absolutely the worst that you're wasting Mom's kindness like this," he added. It seemed David was completely on his mother's side. "Do you even understand how I feel being given tasteless old clothes, some even with holes, that are out of style?" I retorted. Everything felt absurd. All my efforts to maintain a good relationship with my mother-in-law and all my explanations to my husband seemed to be in vain, completely ignoring my feelings. David began treating me more like a housemaid than ever before. "What is this food? Are you skimping on it? You're lacking awareness as a wife. You're a full-time housewife, so you should do better. There are wrinkles in the laundry. My mother wouldn't make a mistake like this. Do it perfectly," he criticized. He was becoming incredibly picky. When I bought new clothes, he yelled, "Even though you wasted Mom's kindness, you're buying new clothes." I thought to myself, I don't know if I can continue this married life any longer. Then one day, David's company trip was confirmed. "Make sure you prepare for my company trip starting tomorrow," he instructed me. I, who have been feeling increasingly like a housemaid lately, naturally felt frustrated. However, upon reflection, this might be an opportunity for revenge. My mother-in-law continued to send me tasteless, worn-out clothes, ranging from men's to children's items, and even things I couldn't identify. Lately, she had even started sending me clothes so dirty, I questioned where she had found them. I retrieved the men's clothes from the pile and stuffed them into David's travel bag. This should do. David's company trip was scheduled for 2 nights and 3 days. During this time, I packed all the rags that had been sent from my mother-in-law into his suitcase. The next day, as soon as David departed for his trip, I began packing my belongings. Before leaving the house, I placed filled-out divorce papers on the table. Meanwhile, David, away on his company trip, found himself the subject of ridicule from his colleagues. "Hey, what's with these raggedy clothes, mate? Did you pick them up from a thrift store? Having a tiff with the missus, eh?" "Serves him right," his colleagues chuckled. That night, as expected, David called me. "Hey, what's the deal with the contents of the suitcase?" he demanded, his fury palpable even over the phone. I struggled to contain my laughter as I questioned David, "Is there an issue with your suitcase?" "What do you mean, an issue? Why are there these shabby clothes in here? Are you out of your mind, making your husband wear these? You think I'm crazy?" I replied calmly. "David, remember what you said, huh? Those clothes were sent as a gesture of goodwill by your mom. It'd be pretty odd for a son to waste such goodwill, don't you think?" Evidently, David hadn't realized the clothes I packed were from his mother. At my revelation, he stumbled over his words, caught off guard. "Hey, are you listening? Those clothes were sent by your mom. Since you were all for blaming me alongside her, you'll be wearing them without complaint, right?" I challenged. "Well, that's..." David was utterly flustered. I told him outright, "Do you understand now? Are you finally getting a feel for what I've been going through?" I left the divorce papers at home. "Divorce, I'll leave the rest to you." And with that, I hung up, leaving things unsaid. David bombarded me with calls and emails, all of which I ignored. Eventually, I returned to my parents' house. A few days later, my mother-in-law called me. "You listen here. You can't get divorced without my approval. If you don't listen, I'll hire a lawyer and sue you for emotional distress," she threatened. I responded calmly, "Feel free to do so." A week later, my mother-in-law instructed me to meet at a coffee shop for a meeting with a lawyer. I arrived at the specified location to find my mother-in-law, husband, and someone who appeared to be a lawyer waiting for me. "What's this? I've already decided on the divorce, so there's nothing to discuss now," I stated firmly. My mother-in-law's expression turned hostile as she snapped, "Don't mess around. After all we've done for you, we won't allow a selfish divorce." "Exactly," my husband chimed in, echoing my mother-in-law's sentiments. "I've become a laughingstock at work because of the clothes you made me wear. Now everyone at the office is laughing at me." "A laughingstock? Isn't that essentially mocking your own mother's tastes and clothing choices?" I couldn't help but laugh in front of them. My mother-in-law glared at me, her eyes widening in anger. "What's so amusing?" "You're such a cheeky wife," she snapped, then turned to the lawyer. "Hey, Mr. Lawyer, she can't possibly request a divorce from her position, can she?" I was informed that the wife was the one causing the trouble, the lawyer questioned, looking puzzled. I made it clear, "No, it's the other way around. I've been harassed by my mother-in-law and husband, receiving clothes like garbage every single month." Upon hearing this, the lawyer appeared perplexed. "This is completely different from what I was told." My mother-in-law seemed flustered by the revelation. Growing impatient with their reactions, my husband abruptly stood up. "That's it. I'm divorcing you, you useless wife. I'll demand full emotional distress compensation," he yelled at me. His outburst caught the attention of all the customers in the coffee shop. Seizing the moment, I asked, "So, does this mean I owe emotional distress compensation?" "Wait, who exactly are you talking to?" "Who, the person behind me?" he questioned, puzzled. I kindly clarified that to my puzzled mother-in-law. Just then, a figure from the back of the room emerged before us. David and my mother-in-law were taken aback, their mouths agape with surprise. "It's been a while, Mom." David, the person who appeared, was David's brother Sam. "What, Sam? Why are you here?" David asked. "Why am I here?" "Well, to defend Jessica, of course," Sam replied. "That's right, Sam. David's older brother is a renowned attorney specializing in divorce," I explained. "Wait a minute, Sam. Why?" "I asked you to defend me, and you declined," my mother-in-law said, sounding perplexed. "Of course I declined." Sam's voice rang firm. "Because it's clear to me that Jessica isn't at fault. And after hearing her side of the story, I discovered that you've been using the money I've been sending home every month under the guise of hard times to torment Jessica, haven't you?" That is." My mother-in-law seemed at a loss for words. Indeed, she had been receiving money from Sam every month. While some of it went towards living expenses, she had been using the excess to purchase supper clothes to send to me, all in an effort to torment me. Sam, in a short time, had researched these facts and collected evidence. "At you, David, the verbal abuse you hurled at Jessica earlier. It's all been recorded." Sam pulled out a voice recorder and played back the harsh words David had shouted earlier. Of course, this too will serve as substantial evidence in the divorce proceedings. "Hey, Sam, you're kidding, right? Why would you side with Jessica instead of your own family?" David asked. Sam responded firmly to David's question. "I'm a lawyer. No matter how you look at it, the fault lies with you too. Your lawyer also seems to see that there's no hope of winning. Maybe he should decline to represent you." At Sam's words, David's lawyer nodded in agreement and quietly left the cafe. "So, you two will be the ones paying the alimony, and Mom, I won't be sending any more money. Understand?" With those words, Sam exited the cafe and I followed him. Thank you, Sam, for helping me even though you're busy," I said, bowing my head. Sam responded with a warm smile. "No worries. I just can't stand injustice, Leonard," he replied. "I'm really grateful for your help this time. Thank you so much." I expressed my gratitude. And thanks to Sam, I was able to divorce peacefully. Of course, I received substantial alimony from my mother-in-law and David. Since the divorce, I haven't heard from my mother-in-law or David, and I've been enjoying the peaceful life. Although parting ways with Sam, who had been so supportive during the ordeal, left me feeling a bit melancholic, I knew I needed to move on swiftly and carve out my own path. I resolved to live my life to the fullest, one that David and my mother-in-law could only dream of envying. With that promise etched in my heart, I embarked on my new journey. We're not your family. Leave and go back home. On our road trip with my husband, Joseph, and his parents, we pulled over at a rest stop. Stepping out of the RV, Joseph surprised me with these hurtful words. What? Wait, what did you say? It felt like he was someone else entirely, not the caring husband I knew. Seeing my shocked expression, the three of them smirked, and Joseph started driving the RV away. I couldn't believe it. They wouldn't leave me stranded out here. In a panic, I dialed a number, hoping for help, but my mother-in-law's response left me speechless. Did you really think you were coming with us? How audacious. Please don't make a scene and come back. I was excited about our trip. Sorry, but we can't turn back on the highway. And remember, you're not really family, you're just my son's wife. It's time you understood that. We're going to enjoy ourselves without you. As the call abruptly ended, the RV shrank into the distance until it vanished from sight, leaving me stunned. The words, "You're not really part of our family," stabbed deep into my heart, causing intense pain. It was awful. They had me do all the preparations, only to hit me with this. Bitterness and heartache overwhelmed me. Helpless, I had to call a taxi and head back home. I'm Allison, 31 years old, married to Joseph, who's the same age. We got married 2 years ago, and Joseph bought us a house when I didn't want to live with his parents. It's close to their place, but I prefer it to living with them. Still, they're quite demanding, always asking me to run errands or clean up after them. It can feel like harassment sometimes. But Joseph always apologizes for their behavior. I try to endure it. His parents care a lot about what others think, so they treat me well in public. I have to be careful not to say anything negative about them. But deep down, I've always hoped to understand them better someday. But being abandoned by my husband left me reeling, and it took me a while to recover. The idea of going camping came up a week ago when we visited his parents on our day off. While cleaning the storage room, I stumbled upon a lantern. "Do you guys go camping?" I asked. "Huh? What do you mean?" My husband's parents seemed surprised. "Oh, that. We bought it just in case of a power outage. We forgot we had it." "I see. My dad loves camping, and I used to go with him a lot. So I wondered if you guys were into it too." When I mentioned my dad's enthusiasm for camping and his RV, my husband's eyes lit up. "That sounds great. I've always wanted to try it. Let's go on our first family camping trip next week for a night and 2 days. Allison, can you rent an RV? My dad loves his RV and takes good care of it, so I'm not sure if he'll lend it to us." "You'll have to convince him." When I hesitated, my husband pleaded. "It's our first time camping and we don't know what we need. It would be safer to borrow your dad's RV. Plus, I really want to make my parents happy with a fun camping adventure. Please, Allison." With him asking so earnestly, I couldn't refuse. I went straight to my dad's place and laid out the situation. To my surprise, he was all for it. "Really? That's wonderful. I thought you might hesitate, considering how meticulously you care for it. But if it's for you, Allison, I'm more than happy to lend it, and it warms my heart to see you trying to please Joseph's parents. Here, take this whole camping gear set so you can enjoy your first trip. These items are beginner-friendly, perfect for you." My dad carefully selected gear and explained everything. It meant a lot to me to see how much he cared. I felt a surge of happiness. Maybe this camping trip could help me bond with my in-laws after all. "Okay, I'll get everything ready," I promised. I booked a campground with power access and a nearby hot spring. When I shared the news with my husband and in-laws, they were thrilled. "We're so lucky to have you, Allison. I can't wait," exclaimed my husband. "I'm glad to see you're excited," his parents chimed in. On the day of the trip, I hopped into the RV with my husband, bubbling with anticipation. We hit the highway, heading for the campground. My heart raced with excitement, but as we drove, my mother-in-law began making demands again. "Joseph, I'm thirsty. Can we stop at the interchange?" "Mom, I brought drinks. You can choose one from here," my husband replied. None of them satisfied her. "As my daughter-in-law, you should know what I like," she scolded. I am sorry," I muttered. Stepping out of the car at the interchange to buy her a Diet pepper, as she requested, I was stunned when my husband spoke in a cold, unfamiliar tone. "Allison, you're not part of our family. Go home now." "Excuse me, what?" What's gotten into you? He seemed like a completely different person. He wasn't the Joseph I knew, the one who usually cared for me. Shocked and bewildered by his words, I watched as they laughed and the RV pulled away, abandoning me in the middle of nowhere. Was this some twisted joke? Panic rising, I made a call, only to be met with a shocking response from my mother-in-law. You really thought you could join us? How bold of you. Remember, you're not part of our family. Bye, we're going to have a great time without you. Stunned, I stood there, staring at the phone after the call abruptly ended. How could they? They had me do all the preparations only to leave me behind. What was Joseph thinking? Bitterness and sadness flooded over me, but I couldn't confront them. Instead, I called a taxi and went home. The next day, my husband and in-laws returned from their camping trip, chatting excitedly about their adventures. Not once did they apologize for leaving me behind. When I questioned them about it, their response was astonishing. I stood up for you, Allison, and they treated you so unfairly. It's ridiculous. We're not letting this go. I refuse to let them get away with it. We're going to get even. How? I've got a plan up my sleeve, and I know just the perfect spot for camping. Listen closely, my amazing dad. It's foolproof. With my father's words echoing in my mind, I returned to my in-laws' home, where my husband and his parents were still buzzing with excitement from yesterday's trip. It was the perfect opportunity to set them up. I put on a gentle smile, hiding my true feelings, and addressed them in a calm tone. I found an even more incredible spot than yesterday's. The autumn leaves are stunning right now. Why not go all out with a proper camping trip instead of staying in the RV? We could set up a tent, have a barbecue, and soak in the scenery. At night, the sky is filled with stars. Really? Where's this spot? It's a secret place I want to keep just for us. Can I come along as your wife? That sounds fantastic. It'll be a blast. Since it's a secluded area, I'll drive. I'll play my part as your wife and as my in-law's daughter-in-law. Can I join you guys? As expected, my husband and his parents were thrilled and agreed to let me join them. The following weekend, we decided to go camping again. True to form, they left all the preparation to me, and their nagging about discipline only intensified each day. I held on to my secret plan, meticulously arranging my revenge, and the day of our trip finally arrived. I borrowed an RV from my father, drove to a secluded campsite, and my husband and in-laws were thrilled. Wow, it feels like our own private getaway. They eagerly scoped out the surroundings, thrilled by the new setting. Let's take a walk and soak in the scenery, I suggested. Sounds good. Enjoy your walk. Come on, let's go. I ushered them off with a smile, then turned my attention to setting up. About 30 minutes later, my husband called in a panic. We're lost. I can't find your dad's RV. I'm heading back home with it. What? What do you mean? Don't worry. I left you with the essentials for a real camping experience. It was part of the plan my father had come up with. He thought it would be good for them to try some rugged camping, like being on a deserted island instead of a cushy campground with electricity and nearby hotels. You should set up your tent soon and gather wood for a fire. I know you don't have a lighter, so you'll have to start the fire the old-fashioned way. I left a pot so you can at least cook some rice. You left us behind. You were the ones who said I wasn't part of the family and shouldn't come camping with you. So I dropped you off at the campsite and sadly went home. Isn't that what you wanted? My husband was momentarily speechless, struck by my reasoning. Enjoy your camping trip with just your precious family, I retorted before almost ending the call. But my husband, consumed by rage, erupted into a tirade. Don't be ridiculous. Come back now, or I'll divorce you. Fine, let's get divorced. You'll regret it when you're stranded on the highway and find my father's beloved RV trashed. I've had enough of living with your disrespectful parents. And you'll be the one regretting it, you fool. I snapped back, feeling utterly repulsed by his behavior as he abruptly hung up. I was nearby, but I had no desire to go pick them up. Later, my husband called again. His tone drastically changed, his voice trembling with confusion. I can't figure out how to set up the tent. It's raining and my parents are getting mad. And it's getting cold. What do I do? Already regretting it because it's cold. That was fast. Why not search for tent setup tutorials on YouTube? Forget about the tent. My dad yanked it too hard and tore it apart. Allison, you've had your fun. Now get yourself together and come pick us up. I'm not coming. If you walk for about an hour, you'll hit a main road. If you're not camping, then come down here with your stuff. What? Just because I'm asking nicely doesn't mean you can act all high and mighty. Realizing this was my husband's true colors, my feelings for him had cooled completely. All I could do was sigh. Forget it. I'm going to ditch all this useless stuff. Just wait till we get home. That's private property. Dumping anything here is illegal, and you'll get sued for it. There's a sign clearly saying no littering. I don't care. My husband's tone was firm, showing doubt about my seriousness regarding divorce. I had to make him see reality. After the divorce, I'll be seeking compensation for the emotional distress caused by all the harassment you've put me through. What? Divorce? Is this? I'm serious. Our conversation from the time I was abandoned on the highway is recorded on my dad's RV dashcam. So you can't deny it. And I've recorded the conversations of your harassment afterward too. Let's calm down. We don't have any savings because we've been paying a mortgage. If you leave, I won't have anyone to cook and clean, which will be a problem. Think before you speak. I'm not your maid. If you refuse the divorce, I'll take it to court. It'll become a big issue, and everyone in the family will know. My husband, always mindful of others' opinions, fell silent. I could hear his parents fussing in the background, but it no longer mattered to me. After that, my husband tried to start a sentence with a "you know," but the call abruptly ended. Soon after, my in-laws began bombarding me with calls, but I ignored them all. Eventually, the calls ceased, likely because their phones ran out of battery. My father's revenge plan had worked like a charm. On my way home, I swung by to pick up the divorce papers, filled them out, and left them on the table before heading back to my childhood home, where my caring father lived. Interestingly, it took my husband and in-laws 3 hours to descend the mountain, a journey that usually only took one. You should have used Google Maps instead of bothering me with calls. How foolish. My husband, driven by desperation to make me stay, stormed into my parents' house, his fury palpable. "Allison, come out here now. I'll show you what happens when you defy me. If you've got something to say it to my father. He's pretty steamed, so watch out." My burly and imposing father confronted my husband at the door, giving him a piece of his mind and putting him in his place. Additionally, they left their tent and camping gear in the mountains, resulting in a lawsuit for illegal dumping filed by the mountain's owner. The one who filed the lawsuit was my father, who had inherited the land from my grandfather. With numerous cases of trespassing and dumping occurring, security cameras were installed, revealing the culprits responsible for the mess. Now, we wait to see what consequences they'll face. After finalizing the divorce, I demanded and received $1 million each from my husband and in-laws for the emotional distress they caused me. Struggling to keep up with their mortgage, my husband's house was foreclosed, and he now resides with his parents in their rundown home, living a modest life as a family of 3. But, as they say, there's no point crying over spilled milk. I returned to my former job before marriage, regaining a lifestyle that suits me. Next month, I'm planning a camping trip with my parents, and I'm certain it'll be an enjoyable experience. My name is Luda Okojima. I'm 29 and work for a big international company. I grew up in the United States until I was 18. My dad is Japanese and my mom is white. He's the boss at the company where I work. I learned 5 languages when I was very young, thanks to tutoring. Now I'm in charge of the company's operations in Japan, all thanks to my dad's support and the education he gave me. I followed my mom's beliefs and agreed to an arranged marriage. My husband, Akinari, is 6 years older than me. Love wasn't what brought us together. As we started living together, I noticed things that bothered him. The laundry needs washing. We only talk about basic stuff because of our situation. I've been swamped with work emails this week, sorry. That's not an excuse, Han. Lots of wives work and still manage their homes. He was firm about our roles. I work hard, but living together is new to me. I was doing my best to adapt. You're just standing there drinking coffee. How does that help? Drinking coffee helps me wake up and get ready for the day. It's my routine. Mind your own business. Akinari has always been like this since we got married. Maybe he doesn't really love me. He often reminds me that I was homeschooled, so I should be good at housework. Okay, yes, I can handle the housework. You knew that from the beginning. You're so focused on yourself, even though you didn't have a proper education. This household functions because of me. Remember that. We lived in a 4-bedroom house. It was Akinari's dream to own a home, so we took out a loan and got approved. It wasn't something I cared much about, but he made it seem like a manly achievement I wouldn't understand. We never really talked much about our jobs. Education isn't everything, I said simply. Are you testing me? You're belittling my education. According to you, the husband should be the main provider, and the wife should silently follow. Plus, you have a strong accent. People can barely understand you here. We're in Japan, he criticized me for everything. I grew up in the US, so my Japanese won't sound perfect. My mom helped me with pronunciation, but I speak 5 languages. I won't sound like a native Japanese because I'm not. He didn't know this, so he assumed I was unintelligent. I'm going to do the laundry. I'm off today, and Akinari will be leaving for work soon. He's a big germaphobe and always tells me you must bleach the toilet seat after every use. He washed me closely to ensure I cleaned everything after each use. When we moved in together, I used to wear shoes indoors, which is normal in America. Are you white or Japanese? Stop being gross like everyone in America. Take off your shoes, he snapped. In my mind, I thought, I am white. Half white. He was obsessed with cleanliness, always armed with hand sanitizer wipes and disinfectant. At home, he made me feel like I was the messiest person alive. Sorry for the germs, I'd say, wiping things down daily. Honestly, it got annoying. As I loaded the washer, I thought I heard him call, so I went to see what he needed. Did you call me? He snapped back. I did, but you took forever to come. You're just testing my patience. I couldn't hear you. I was doing laundry, and the machine is loud. I explained honestly. You couldn't hear over the washer? Are you deaf? You're pathetic. That's why people without degrees never achieve anything. My husband loved reminding me of my background. I couldn't finish my degree in the US because my father changed jobs. When we moved to Japan, I had to get a degree to work. I passed the entrance exam at a community college known for failures and dropouts. My husband graduated from the University of Tokyo. Coming from America, I didn't realize how prestigious that was until after we got married. But to me, a person's value goes beyond their degree. Is it really such a big deal that I graduated from a community college? What about all the other people in Japan who did too? Do you think less of them as well? I started questioning his values. What's the problem with being a community college graduate? There are many talented people in the world, no matter where they studied. In my company, there are even some who only finished high school, and they're doing great. I don't understand why he's so focused on appearances. In Japan, education is important, but doesn't everyone deserve respect regardless of their education level? I'm sorry, I didn't realize. Oh, so you went to the University of Tokyo, right? Isn't that like the top-notch education? The University of Tokyo? Ha, it's impressive. It's almost funny because you don't even grasp how amazing it is. I'm embarrassed I married someone not as smart as me. If it wasn't for our moms knowing each other, I wouldn't have gone through with this marriage. You don't deserve someone like me. He often talks about himself and points out what I lack compared to him. He enjoys making me feel inferior. In my opinion, people like him shouldn't be the most successful at their jobs. But strangely, his education seemed enough for him to succeed, even though I couldn't relate. I said, I get it. Someone like me doesn't deserve someone as smart as you. Whatever. Just listen to me. I went to the University of Tokyo, so I'll guide you. Just don't try to do things on your own. He's got a big ego and always wants to be in charge. I can't even slightly disagree with him because he always has to have the final word. Okay, time to head to work. Akinari grabbed his suitcase, leaving his coffee half finished, and dashed out the door. I glanced at the table and started tidying up. Isn't this table clean enough? I muttered to myself. 3 hours after he left for work, I got a call. Hello? What? With a subcontractor? Got it. I'll be there ASAP. My company informed me about a mistake found in an order with one of the subcontractors I oversee. They failed to deliver the materials we needed on time for our next project, which would now be delayed. To make matters worse, the materials are coming from overseas, adding extra time and cost. It was supposed to be my day off, but work couldn't wait. When I arrived, everyone was busy, and I immediately met with the team to assess the situation. I reviewed invoices and prioritized materials for the building starting construction soon. I managed a plan for the construction to start next week, but I knew the issue wasn't resolved yet. If the additional materials didn't arrive on time, it would affect future projects too. Normally, the subcontractor would handle such issues, but this time it fell on me. After a tiring day, I finally returned home from work, expecting a relaxing day off. I collapsed into bed and quickly fell asleep. Luda, Luda. I heard my name and stirred awake. I'm sorry, I must have dozed off, I said, though I wasn't truly apologetic. Still, Akinari was quick to judge. You're so privileged. You have a day off and can't even cook dinner for your husband. Instead, you sleep. He was already starting with the criticism, even though I had just woken up. I'm sorry, I had to go to work. There was an urgent situation, I explained, but he retorted, what kind of company calls its employees on their day off? I had a tough day too, you know. He always wanted his problems to take precedence. Perhaps he couldn't handle the idea of his wife being a better employee. It might have been his ego stemming from his prestigious alma mater, the University of Tokyo. Knowing his patterns by now, I tuned him out. Wait, it's 8 o'clock. I glanced at the clock and gasped. I've been asleep for 5 hours since I got home from work. The laundry I started this morning is still in the washer, and I haven't even made dinner. Suddenly, all the tasks I needed to do hit me at once. What are you waiting for? Make dinner first, then clean the tub. After that, do the laundry and the rest of the cleaning. There was a piece of your hair on the floor. It's filthy. His anger hadn't subsided, especially since I had fallen asleep. He never lifted a finger to help around the house since we got married, and he wasn't about to start now. He dictated my tasks and strolled into the living room. I hurried out of bed, washed my face, and started cooking dinner. Just as dinner was almost ready, Akinari's phone rang. It's me. It's happening again. Just stay quiet for now. Don't say a word. If they find out, we could be sued, and I'll bear the brunt of it. Be careful, he said, then abruptly ended the call. Who was that? Work? Did you mention something about being sued? Is there something going on? I already had a sense that something was going on after overhearing his conversation, but he refused to acknowledge it. Please just relax. It's not your concern. Besides, even if there was an issue, your small mind wouldn't be able to handle it, he retorted, hitting me with an unexpected insult. I seethed with anger but focused on getting through dinner without responding. I'm heading to the office, he suddenly declared, swiftly grabbing his phone and wallet. Before I could question him, he was out the door. I noticed he'd left his suitcase behind, and a file protruded from it. What's this? As I examined the file, labeled Okadera Mountain Resort Hotel Construction Plan Details, shock shot through me. I quickly snapped a photo with my phone as evidence before carefully returning everything to its place. By the time Akinari returned just before midnight, I was seething. I heard him announce his arrival and head toward the living room. Welcome back, I greeted him. I need dinner first, he demanded. I simply replied, I didn't make any. What? What did you say? You didn't cook? He raised his voice. Yes, I had something more important to attend to, I retorted. You're making excuses again. How much incompetence can one tolerate? That's why I can't stand you, with your community college background. I don't even care if we get a divorce at this point, he declared, his tone deadly serious. He was a staunch believer in patriarchal control, always insisting on having his way. I finally reached my breaking point and snapped back, fine, let's get a divorce. He was taken aback by my response. Divorce? What? He asked, bewildered. I pressed on. You've been belittling me, making me feel unintelligent, but that's far from the truth. My words struck a nerve, leaving him puzzled. What do you mean? He questioned. I haven't mentioned it because I don't care about school. But I actually attended Harvard University, I revealed. Harvard? Do you even know what Harvard is? His shock was evident. Oh, didn't your mother tell you? I was born and raised in the US. I lived there until I was 18, I explained. You? What? Are you serious? Akinari looked pained. His ego took a hit. He had been proud of his degree from Japan's top university, but this revelation reminded him of even more prestigious institutions. You're joking. There's no way I believe that, he scoffed, growing disrespectful. Are you feeling offended? You seem to resort to inappropriate remarks when you're caught off guard. I guess the University of Tokyo isn't as prestigious as you thought, I said, surprised by my own assertiveness. My feelings aren't hurt. I just need proof. Show me the evidence, he insisted, needing tangible proof to believe my claim. So I showed him a photo from my freshman year orientation. Can you read English? The sign clearly says Harvard Unit. I pointed out. Don't mock me. I can read that, he retorted, scrutinizing the photo himself. Do you believe me now? Why did you hide this from me? If I had known, I wouldn't have married you, he remarked, his ego clearly wounded. Was it necessary to feel superior to your wife? I challenged. And no, my mom never mentioned it. And what do you mean you didn't care? It's like you weren't interested in me at all, he deflected, playing the victim. Isn't it wrong to judge people based on their education? Despite appearances, I can speak 5 languages: English, Japanese, Spanish, French, and Portuguese. How many can you speak? Being a University of Tokyo graduate, what does intelligence mean to you? What's so impressive about your alma mater? I taunted, watching him squirm. 5 languages, really? Then why did you attend that community college? It's like you did it to deceive me, and don't even try. My superiority stems from attending the University of Tokyo, he stubbornly asserted. Clearly, his alma mater held immense significance and prestige in his eyes. I pressed on, sensing his frustration. Judging people solely based on their educational background is narrow-minded. True value lies in someone's ability to excel regardless of where they studied. That's why I hold a high position in my company, I stated, watching him struggle to process my words. Until now, he had always believed himself to be superior to me. It seemed this revelation shifted his perspective. Never mind, I need to discuss something more urgent, I interjected, steering the conversation back to the main issue. While I knew it was leading towards discussing divorce plans, there was another matter I had to address first. Akinari was taken aback, wondering what else I had to say. Handing him the file I had found earlier, I demanded, "Explain what this is." Before he could respond, I continued, "This is the detailed plan for the Okadera Mountain Resort Hotel construction project. I know it's a significant project you're working on. How did you?" he began, but I cut him off. "I saw it sticking out of your bag, so I looked. You went through my private work files? Do you realize how serious this is? If this information were to fall into the wrong hands," he started, his voice rising in alarm. "What are you afraid of? Being sued by my company and having the truth exposed? Is that what would happen if this ever got into the wrong hands?" I challenged. Akinari was left speechless, his eyes wide with shock. "We've both been distant from each other. That document is a joint construction project agreement and contract between my company and yours. See where it says cooperating company and XS company. XS company is mine and I'm the vice president," I revealed with a smile. His mouth fell open, a bead of sweat trickling down his face. He began to panic and feigned examining the document. "No, that can't be right. It must be a mistake from my assistant in the material order or something. Are you making excuses now?" "I didn't even mention the material order. We were investigating why we lost contact with your company and realized there was an error in the order. We plan to confirm it later, but your admission just confirmed it," I countered. He covered his mouth, perhaps trying to stop himself from saying more. "It's too late now," he interjected sharply, "and based on what I heard on the phone, it seems you're the one responsible for this mess. You can't even manage to place orders correctly or handle the construction schedule. It's clear that a University of Tokyo graduate doesn't live up to the hype. Or do you still believe you're so brilliant?" He continued, cutting me off before I could respond. "Why does my wife's company have to outshine mine? How is this even possible? This is absurd. I'm intelligent and capable because of my University of Tokyo degree. You know it," he lamented to himself. In response, I calmly stated, "Well, I've never considered you particularly bright." "Oh, please." The sight of his expression makes me nauseous. "As the vice president and head of this project, I'm halting all transactions with your company and seeking damages for this project. Additionally, I'll be filing for divorce." I informed him of the 3 actions I intended to take. "Please, anything but that," my usually disrespectful husband begged, his palms pressed together. "What do you mean anything but that? You mean all 3 actions. All of them. My entire life will crumble at once," he pleaded. "Yes, all of them. It seems it's not just one issue now, is it?" I couldn't help but chuckle at his incompetence. This time, as he watched me laugh at him, he felt a deep sense of shame. I no longer wish to be associated with such incompetence, whether as a couple or a company. "It's time to let go and preserve what dignity you have left," I advised him. At that moment, he seemed to realize he had run out of options. Desperately, he clung to my leg, perhaps in a last-ditch effort to save himself. "Please don't leave me. Don't leave me," the once confident man now sounded desperate, resembling a child being punished by being kicked out of his parents' home. Ignoring his pleas, I made a phone call instead. "Hi, President. I'll explain the details later, but I've identified the person responsible for the project mishap. Yes, I'll ensure damages are claimed properly. Okay, bye." After hanging up, he slowly released my leg and stared at the floor. Exhausted, I decided to head to bed without a word, leaving him behind. The next morning, my husband was nowhere to be found. Before heading to work, I stopped by the courthouse to obtain divorce paperwork, which I kept in my purse. I planned to have him sign the papers after work. Upon arriving at the office, I encountered a commotion at the entrance. Akinari was amidst a group of men, engaged in a heated dispute. "I'm terribly sorry," the president apologized upon seeing me approach. "They've been causing a disturbance for the past 30 minutes, so I decided to call the police." Shortly after, the police arrived and intervened. Amidst the chaos, I couldn't make out what was being said. After giving them a stern warning, the police dispersed the group and they left. That evening, Akinari returned home with a defeated air about him. Without a word, he silently signed the papers I presented. "Never subject yourself to such humiliation again," I admonished, but he seemed to be lost in his own world, broken and detached. Ensuring he completed all the paperwork correctly, I gathered my belongings and left without another word, opting to stay in a hotel until I found a new place. The following day, I filed the necessary paperwork to finalize the divorce. Our marriage had lacked love from the start, so I felt neither sadness nor stress over its dissolution. Life continued as usual, and 2 weeks later, I learned that my ex-husband's company had declared bankruptcy. Despite paying the damages to my company, they couldn't sustain future projects due to financial constraints. Consequently, my ex-husband, the project leader, faced legal action from the company, as my boss informed me. Ironically, my ex-husband's emphasis on education as a measure of competence had backfired. His downfall underscored the truth that academic credentials alone don't guarantee success. While Japan values higher education, once in a company, everyone is on equal footing. Success depends on resourcefulness and intentions, not just academic prowess. With this realization, I reaffirmed my belief that a person's educational background isn't paramount. Instead, dedication and determination are what truly matter. Armed with this perspective, I vowed to continue my journey with unwavering dedication, confident that success would follow. My name is Michelle, and I work in an office. I'm 31 years old, and my husband John is 33. We actually met through a friend's introduction, and now we've been married for 2 years. When I was growing up, I was pretty sheltered, being an only child. I went to a regular public school until middle school, but then I switched to an all-girls private school until college. You know how it is with all-girls schools. There's a lot of admiration among friends, but I never really thought about dating guys seriously. Sure, I went out with a couple of guys in my early 20s, but nothing really clicked for marriage. I always figured I'd meet someone eventually, but time flew by, and suddenly I was in my 30s. My parents started getting worried, especially my dad. He started suggesting I meet some guys he found on matchmaking websites, and one of those guys turned out to be John, my husband now. After we met a few times, John told me he had feelings for me. He's a really kind person who respects his parents a lot. I'm the same way, so I felt like we shared important values. That's why I decided to marry him. Our wedding was organized pretty quickly, and our families and friends were all there to support us. I was thrilled and hoped that our happiness would last forever. But not long after we got married, John's dad got sick and passed away. John started spending a lot of time taking care of his mom, which is totally understandable. He's always visiting her and even goes on trips with her. While he still cares about me, it sometimes feels like his mom comes first in everything. It's a bit frustrating, but other than that, things are okay. I guess this is just how marriage is, so I've learned to accept it and make compromises. Lately, I've been finding a lot of happiness in entering sweepstakes and winning prizes. It's been mostly little things like makeup and snacks. But then I hit the jackpot, a pair of tickets to Miami. I couldn't believe it when I got the call. It was the first time I ever won something so big. But then came the tough part, deciding who to take. John had just gone on a trip with his mom, and he usually pays for his own travels. So I thought, why not give this amazing opportunity to my parents? I hurried over to their house and shared the news. Guess what? I won a trip to Miami. Why don't you two go? My mom was ecstatic, saying it had been ages since they'd gone on a trip abroad. However, my dad didn't seem as excited about the trip. I've got work commitments, Michelle, he explained. But you still have some paid leave left, don't you? I countered. True, but this is a busy season for our industry, especially for me as the department head. Taking time off isn't easy. My mom then suggested, Michelle, if you can manage to get leave, why don't you and I go? I thought about it and agreed. You're right, Mom. It's too good of an opportunity to miss. Since my dad couldn't make it, I decided to ask my boss for time off the next day. Thankfully, work was slow, and I got permission without any trouble. After work, I swung by a bookstore at the station to pick up a guidebook on Miami, filled with excitement for the trip. As I neared home, I noticed the lights were already on. John must have gotten back home already, I realized. I better hurry up with dinner, I thought to myself. As I opened the door, instead of John's shoes, I spotted a pair of women's shoes I recognized. Michelle, what's the meaning of leaving the house empty at this hour? Scolded my mother-in-law. Oh, I didn't know you were here, I responded. It doesn't matter if I'm here or not. It's time for John to be home, and you should be preparing dinner and getting things ready for him, she lectured. Living nearby, she has a spare key, courtesy of John. I understand she feels lonely since her husband passed away, but her unexpected visits and presumptions of entitlement don't sit well with me. Plus, she holds onto old-fashioned beliefs about a wife's role, and she's not a fan of me working. Every time we cross paths, she finds something to criticize or make snide remarks about, which makes it difficult for me to warm up to her. Why the long face and the detour instead of coming straight home? She continued, You're such a useless wife. Let me see what you bought, my mother-in-law demanded. Please stop, I objected, but she ignored me and grabbed the bag containing the guidebook. What's all this? What do you plan to do in Miami? How extravagant, she exclaimed. No, it's a prize I won. I'm giving it as a gift to my parents, I explained. Well, nobody told me about this, she retorted. Just as we were arguing, John walked in. I'm back. What's going on? He asked. Welcome home, John. Michelle won a trip to Miami, my mother-in-law informed him. How thoughtless of you to give it to Michelle's parents without discussing it first. I would have loved to go, John said. I didn't know about the trip to Miami either. I was thinking of giving it to my parents, I responded. How many people can go on this trip? John inquired. It's for 2 people, I replied. You should have told me beforehand. I would have loved to go too. Why are you making decisions on your own? John questioned. I thought about going with just the 2 of us. But this time, I wanted to give it to my parents, I explained. You're mistaken. This time Mom and I are going, and you're staying home, John declared firmly, cutting off my protests. No way. I won this. I'm going to give it as a gift to my parents, I insisted. We can plan something else another time, right? Mom really wants to go, so please try to understand, I pleaded. What are you even saying? You just went on a trip with your mom not long ago. Why can't I use my own money to go on a trip? Anyway, this time Mom and I are going. If you don't like it, we can get a divorce, John declared, dropping the word like a bombshell. The mention of divorce from my husband, used as a threat, made me feel a sudden wave of detachment towards him. Fine, do as you please, I responded, deciding to step back. My husband and mother-in-law, oblivious to my internal turmoil, seemed pleased with themselves. You should have been more understanding from the start, they chided. Ignoring their smug remarks, I began to consider my next steps to address the situation. The following day, I sought counsel from my parents, sharing the ordeal with them. My mom, who had been excited about the trip, seemed disappointed, but she understood the situation. I understand. If that's how it is, we can't help it. It's better to avoid any tension between you two, so don't worry, she reassured me. Feeling guilty about letting her down, I decided to make things right. During my lunch break, I called the airline and requested to change the trip to Miami to include my husband and mother-in-law instead. However, the operator explained that once the reservation is made, changes aren't allowed, and the tickets are only valid for the winner. This was clearly stated in the documents they sent me. Realizing my mistake, I told the operator I would decline the prize. I chose not to tell my husband and the others about this and decided that if they really wanted to go, they could purchase tickets themselves. That evening, when my husband came home from work, he brought up the trip. "Hey Michelle, did you call the airline? Did you tell them we're going to Miami with Mom?" he asked. I made the call and handed over the winning documents and tickets to my husband. "Here, take a look at these. All the details are in there. It's important to read them," I urged. Knowing he probably wouldn't bother reading them, I handed them over anyway. True to form, he just glanced at them and set them on his shelf. "Try to see this as a kind gesture for your mom," I suggested. "Sure, I'm more than happy to stay home. I can't wait to see their reactions," he agreed. On the day of the trip, John seemed unusually tense, as if something was weighing heavily on him. As the departure day arrived, John and his mother encountered delays at the airport. "What's going on? Can you explain this?" he demanded, looking at me with confusion and frustration. "As we've explained, these tickets are non-transferable, and if the winner isn't present, they become invalid. This is clearly outlined in our policy. Anyone else attempting to use them would need to pay the full fare," the airline representative reiterated. John and his mother had already splurged on luxury hotels, stretching their budget thin. Then, at the airport ticket counter, they encountered yet another setback. "I'm terribly sorry, but there seems to be an issue. Could you please try using a different payment method?" the attendant requested. "That's impossible. This card has been working perfectly fine. Why is this happening now?" John exclaimed in frustration. "I'm afraid we can't diagnose the problem here. You may want to contact your card issuer for assistance," the attendant advised. With no other option, John had to resort to using another credit card and then reach out to me. "Hey, what's happening? The tickets you gave us aren't usable, and now my credit card's been declined," he explained over the phone. "Did you bother reading the fine print on the ticket? It clearly states they're invalid if the winner isn't present. And as for your credit card issue, that's news to me," I retorted. "Not your card," John clarified. "Well, I've reported my card lost. I couldn't find it in my wallet, so I suspected you might have taken it. Thankfully, it hasn't been misused," I explained. "That's not amusing. You won't get away with this when we're back," John threatened. "That's entirely your own doing. What you did amounts to theft," I countered. "You know what, woman? I'm divorcing you. Get out," John declared angrily. Fine. Just as I expected you'd say. As you wish. I'll agree to the divorce," I replied calmly. Truth be told, I had already planned to leave for my parents' house before John told me to go. I had already packed my bags, using the paid leave I had taken for this trip. As I left the house, I made sure to take the passbook and seal so he couldn't access our savings. I also informed the neighbors that we would be getting divorced. Upon reviewing our savings for potential division in the event of a divorce, I discovered that the funds had been depleted multiple times. I had no recollection of making these withdrawals, indicating that John was responsible. Further investigation, comparing the withdrawal dates with my daily blog entries, revealed that the money was withdrawn during the period when John and my mother-in-law were on vacation. I confided in my parents about John's proposition for divorce, his unauthorized use of my credit card, and his utilization of our joint savings for the trip with my mother-in-law. As I recounted the situation, my parents' expressions shifted from concern to sternness. "I can't believe John would stoop to such deceit. I'm deeply sorry. It's my fault for arranging your marriage," my dad apologized, bowing his head in shame. His anger towards John was evident. "This falls on my shoulders. Leave it to me," he assured me, taking responsibility. In reality, my dad held a high-ranking position at the parent company of John's employer and occasionally conducted audits. Despite another colleague being originally assigned, my dad rearranged his schedule at short notice to personally audit John's company. During the audit, he invited John's superior, an executive at the subsidiary, for a meal. Given the hierarchical structure, John's superior was visibly anxious, attempting to curry favor with my dad while struggling with nerves. During the meal, my dad took the opportunity to inform John's superior about my situation. "In fact, my daughter is going through a divorce. It appears that the main issues stemmed from her husband's excessive dependence on his mother. If it were just that, I might have advised her to persevere, but it seems he also misused my daughter's credit card and depleted her savings without her consent. Under such circumstances, I couldn't in good conscience recommend reconciliation. By the way, your subordinate, or rather, former son-in-law, I suppose, is John. How has his performance been lately? My dad inquired. It's a busy time, but I haven't seen him much around the office, John's superior responded. Upon learning about my impending divorce from my dad, John's superior sensed trouble and decided to look into the matter further. John, being the son-in-law of the parent company's director, was well known within the company and received some preferential treatment. However, a closer examination might reveal more about his conduct. I'll arrange for a lawyer recommended by my dad to handle the divorce proceedings. You'll receive written confirmation soon, covering matters like alimony and property division, I informed John. John assured me that he wouldn't let things slide, but it seemed that neither he nor his mother would have an easy time upon their return from Miami. Sometime after John and my mother-in-law returned from their trip to Miami, John paid a visit to my parents' house. Michelle, what's this certified mail about? I'm strapped for cash. I can't afford to pay any alimony, and this property division, it's just a marital spat. There's no need to take it this far. I've apologized, so please come back, John pleaded. What are you saying? Have you even read the contents of the certified mail? Your mother's constant mental abuse, not to mention depleting our savings and attempting to use my credit card without permission. There's no way we can reconcile, right? I countered. Please, don't say that. Since you left, it's been difficult for both Mom and me. Have you been receiving icy stares from the neighbors, or have there been issues at work? John inquired, his demeanor stiffening. I suppose I hit the nail on the head, I remarked. How did you? Well, who knows? What do you think the reason might be? If you reflect on your actions, you might understand, I replied. I can't reconcile with you, and you'll have to face the consequences. Prepare yourself. Also, please communicate through the attorney from now on. If you persist in lingering, I'll involve the security company, John warned sternly. When I mentioned involving the security company, John finally relented and left with a heavy heart. In truth, everything John had come pleading about was orchestrated by my father and me. Before returning to my parents' home, I went to our neighbors and spun a tale about being kicked out by my husband and mother-in-law after they stole the plane tickets I had won in a lottery. Drawing from my past experience in the drama club during my student years, my performance was remarkably convincing. Since my husband and mother-in-law returned from their Miami trip, rumors and gossip have swirled around them in the neighborhood. My mother-in-law was mortified to learn from a local busybody that she was being shunned because of rumors like, "You took your daughter-in-law's winning travel tickets and threw her out, didn't you?" But now, it's your turn to hear the full story. Following this incident, my father initiated an investigation at my husband's workplace. It was discovered that my husband, who happened to be the son-in-law of a department head in the parent company, had been abusing his position. He frequently took time off during busy periods to travel with his mother-in-law, habitually arrived late or left early, and was even found to be embezzling company funds. Given the severity of his actions, he was promptly dismissed from his job. The company then issued a statement to all its employees, declaring an end to the preferential treatment previously extended to family members of senior staff. Thanks to the lawyer my father hired, my divorce proceedings unfolded smoothly, and I finally obtained my official single status. The savings my husband had depleted were divided evenly based on their original amounts before his spending spree, and I received fair compensation. My detailed blog entries served as evidence of his emotional abuse, validating my experiences. Feeling liberated after getting justice against my husband and mother-in-law, I didn't want to hoard the compensation from the divorce. Instead, I decided to indulge and treat myself. Coordinating with my father's company holiday, I planned a vacation, seizing the opportunity to embark on the overseas trip I had previously missed out on. Initially undecided on our destination, we eventually settled on Miami, taking into account my mother's preferences. Together with my parents, we meticulously planned our itinerary, anticipating days filled with exploring crystal-clear seas, vibrant coral reefs, indulging in shopping, and relishing our long-overdue family vacation. Recognizing the sorrow I had caused my parents through my divorce, I was determined to make amends and create lasting memories with them. While thoughts of remarriage were far from my mind at the moment, I remained open to the possibility of finding genuine companionship in the future. Uncertain about what lies ahead, I focused on the excitement of our upcoming trip with my parents, cherishing the present happiness and looking forward to what